Hey guys, what's up? I'm Speo with Voice of Reason, and before we get started, I've got a quick update for you. There will not be any tutorials during the next 2 months as I will be away from my home studio on vacation. However, there will be more tutorials by September and hopefully on a weekly schedule. I'm sorry for any inconvenience I've caused. Okay, now let's get into today's tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how you can set up a rhythmic bass pattern or rhythmic bass texture. And I use this technique quite a lot, and here's an example out of an older project of mine, and I never released this track somehow. But it's a quite a good example of what this rhythmic bass texture is all about. Okay, now let's get to recreating this setup. You want to chuck in a Thor, and right under the Thor, create a matrix while holding down Shift so it doesn't auto-route up. A matrix pattern sequencer. And you want to hook up the matrix as follows. You take the gate into the CV1 input on the Thor and the curve into the CV2 input on the Thor. Now inside the Thor we can bring the sustain all the way up here on the amp envelope, just so the note doesn't decay over time. And on the filter we can bring down the envelope and velocity amount all the way, and the frequency as well. And now we're going to select the CV input 1, which is the gate on the matrix, and route it with an amount of 100 to the filter 1 frequency. Now I'm just gonna quickly draw in a note here so you can hear what we've just achieved. So you want to draw in a lower note, so like an A2 is quite a good choice. And now this sounds like this. Which isn't much, of course, but as soon as we right click the matrix and hit randomize pattern right here, we get a nice random gate pattern down here. And now we should have a quite more interesting rhythm. We can now fiddle around with these gates down here until we have a rhythm that is, well, satisfactory. So I'm just gonna bring up here the first step right here, and then if you turn on tie, you can bring up notes that are tied to the next one. So you can have even more variation in your rhythm, like this. I'm just gonna bring up some gates right here so we have a more consistent rhythm. This already sounds like something. Now we can have a look at the oscillator section in Thor and what we can achieve with those. So what I'd suggest is using the first oscillator as a sine wave oscillator on octave 3, and then chucking in another analog oscillator on a sine wave on octave 2 right below, but do not activate it right here. What we're gonna do with this one is we're gonna route it with an amount of about 42 or 44 to the first oscillator frequency amount. So we get a nice frequency modulation going here. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna use the CV2 input, which is the curve on the matrix. And to display the curve, we can just move this little slider up to the curve selector. And we're gonna use the CV2 as a scale for the frequency modulation. So on the scale column right here, chuck in the CV in 2 and bring the amount up to 100. We can now of course also alter the curve until we have a nice kind of FM modulation that is cool with us. We can also bring down the modulation amount a bit. But it's actually quite cool at 42. Okay, now what we can also do just to add a little bit more to the sound, we can chuck in a wavetable oscillator for the third oscillator, and now we can activate it right here so we can actually hear it. And then we can switch it to the mixed waves 1 wavetable, the infamous mixed waves 1, and bring that one down to octave 2 and turn off X fade right here so we have like clean chunks of waves that can be scrolled through by the curve input. So we select the CV input 2, which is the curve on the matrix, and route it with an amount of 100 to the oscillator 3 position. And we can also bring the position down to 0 now that it starts at the, at 0. This sounds already quite cool, I think. What we can now also do is bring up the resonance a bit to kind of put an emphasis on the frequency modulation that happens with the gate input. And we can also bring up the frequency quite a bit so we can actually hear some more of the highs. Bring the frequency up to about 100 Hertz. Okay, now what we can also do in the Thor is activate the chorus to get some more stereo action going. And then we'll chuck in a Scream 4 right beneath the Thor, put it on tape and just give it some saturation. So bring the speed all the way up and the compression at about 30 and just crank the damage up a bit. And there you have the rhythmic kind of, well, bass texture and pattern. Now we of course have some equalization work to do. I'd suggest bringing the very lows down with a parameter at 39 Hertz, so all the way down, and the gain all the way down as well, and then just adjust the Q until you're satisfied. And you could also take out some mids. You could of course be like a little more specific with the EQ section right here, but I just leave that to you, the experimenting, because I can't stomach looking for all the ringers right now. But what you do then is just chuck in a reverb and set it to room mode, which is always a good idea on basses, just to give it some, well, more, yeah, a roomier feel to it. Bring the damp up a bit and the drivette and the decay down to about 20. And there you have your rhythmic kind of pattern. Now on its own it sounds a little weak, but in the context of a song it can achieve some very cool results. And I used it, for example, on my remix of Dino Kid's Chipstick, and I just placed it in between two kind of more consistent basses, and it just gives a very nice dynamic feel to the whole drop. Yeah. I'm probably gonna play the Chipstick remix in the outro so you can listen for what I've just mentioned. Okay, this is it. My name's been Speo. This was the Voice of Reason. I hope this tutorial on rhythmic bass patterns was useful. If it was, feel free to drop a like, a comment, or subscribe if you haven't already. Like I said, I will not be uploading tutorials during the next 2 months, that is July and August 2013, because I'm on vacation. But by September, the tutorials will come back and stronger than ever, hopefully. Okay, see you then. Bye.